All right. Things are about to get weird. That's right. You heard me right. All right. We're going to talk about our incredibly failed experiment and the learnings that came from it, and also the weird side of AI. So
partially failed experiment.
Partially failed.
I'm already mic'd.
Okay. Oh, it's so creepy.
So
okay.
the creepy avatar staring at us now, the intent was that, the original intent of this session, which by the way, welcome to the session, was for us to present you with an entire panel full of creepy inhuman monsters that would answer your questions in ways that our panelists would be helpless to defend against. One of the things that we will discuss in this is why you're not getting that panel. There are many themes to AI, but one of them is that actually building and implementing real AI tooling that does anything more significant than like a simple chatbot is actually quite difficult. And we'll hear thoughts of the panelists about that and some different stories. But maybe we can start with Michael sharing his creepy avatar and how it works, what he did to build it, and maybe give us a little bit of a demo.
Okay, so this is an avatar. It's creepy, but to be fair to the technology, like the original is not completely non-creepy as well. So it's just recreating the experience successfully. So when I heard about this, the idea of the panel, I thought that okay, it sounds pretty straightforward to do. I mean, especially that given I have some programming experience, but also I work with a company that's called Provengo. It's spun off of a university. And one of the guys in our team is actually AI professor, so I figured I'd just call him, tell him to implement it. He'll probably export it to some student, and then just, look what I've done using like student labor. So I was talking to this guy and was like, yeah, well, what you're trying to do where we'll like create a video avatar with data that you install is not that simple, actually. I don't have anything. Like, just go do it yourself. You agreed to be in the panel, so like, your problem. Like, okay, not as simple as we thought. And so it turns out instead of like forking some GitHub thing and making it learn, it turns out to be a bit of a more of a complex issue. But luckily, there's some online things that you can do. So this is from a company called DID. They were quite helpful in giving us credit because it's not for free. Like most AI stuff is like you're paying for tokens. So I just gave it some prompt that we do on one of our other prompts things. And we can try to talk to it. I mean, it's just basically implemented it last night. So I haven't gave it a proper run. And anyway, this is a QA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's full of QA, enthusiast QA professionals. So like crush it as you'd like. I'm going to start a conversation here. Do we get the... We need to hang tight. Okay. Trying to be helpful. Okay. How could it help you guys? Anybody want to ask questions?
If you have any questions or need assistance with your application domain, testing challenges, or exploring how model-based testing with Provengo can benefit you, feel free to share. I'm here to assist.
I don't know if it's sharing the sound.
No, it's not.
No.
Anybody want to ask a question? It's going. Oh, it's
I'm not quite
apologizing.
sure I understand what you mean. Could you clarify a bit? I'm here to help.
What is it?
It's pretty. So when it says "I'm here to help," it's kind of.
Yeah, why does it have Jason Bourne's voice is maybe the first question?
So, well, it was, I implemented it late night, and I didn't want to talk to it, not to wake up people, so I just choose one of the... I guess it's solvable, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's talking again.
Specific topics or areas you'd like to discuss, please let me know.
Can you help me with modeling? What?
Will AI replace humans? Will AI replace
I can certainly
humans?
help you with model-based testing. If you could share more about your application domain, the specific challenges you're facing in testing and quality, or any particular areas where you're seeking guidance. I'd be happy to explore how model-based testing with Provengo might assist you. What would you like to focus on?
All right. So
Anyway,
I think the answer to will it replace humans is certainly not yet. We're jumping ahead a little bit. So that was kind of an introduction. I think maybe to start with, what I want to do is maybe introduce each of our panelists here briefly, let them introduce themselves and what you have done with AI professionally. Maybe just take a few minutes. Our keynote speaker from this morning, of course, is first, Olivia. But tell us how you have used professionally AI and kind of your familiarity with it.
Yeah, well, good afternoon. I'm back. Lovely to see you all again. So I engage with AI in multiple different ways. Quite often, I am more on the opposite end of it, where I'm helping others engage with AI. But for me, in my personal work, I use large language systems specifically for crafting marketing and sales material. And then there is actually, believe it or not, which lends itself well to this panel, there is an avatar actually built of my book. It's still in beta, so you can't actually access it right now, but it's with a company called Wisdom, and they're creating these echoes of authors and their books. And so I have gone through the process actually, and it is quite creepy. They haven't done my face, but they did do my voice, and that one I wasn't necessarily happy about in the end. So I've engaged with all shapes and sizes of artificial intelligence, less often in my own work solely because the nature of my work, but in all shapes and sizes with clients at this rate.
okay, so Michael Barcina, I'm a developer, and also being a C-level guy in a very small company, I also have to do a lot of communication and stuff like that. So I use AI. First of all, we use it in engineering, right? Trying to create stuff and trying to use it, trying to apply it somewhere. Initially, it's like, okay, we have this new tool. Where can it work, or just get some organizational experience with this new tool, and applying it in various places. We'll probably speak about it. Also, I use it because English is not my native language. Kind of like just go over them. I don't tell like ChatGPT or something to write the email for me because I hate that. You can actually see these emails and go like, I don't know, I want to talk to a person. But in finding out all kind of grammatical errors and like using at instead of in, stuff like that, that helps me sound more professional. Hopefully, I don't know.
I think you guys know who I am. Gwen Iversi. I work with Science Bank. So I work here locally. I work in the technology strategy, innovation, and governance area. So that is kind of a, yes, loosely defined role because it covers a lot of different areas. But in general, it's, how are we innovating responsibly? How are we building out our strategy to meet the needs of the business? I use it a lot historically. So I do use it for marketing occasionally. I found it to be pretty decent for that. Although I have found that I typically will need to go through and put make it sound human, because it does, like, my brain picks up on all of the patterns that, AI is. And, once you've read something from some of these programs, whether it's Claude, ChatGPT, they all have patterns in how they respond. And especially if you use it often, you start really seeing those return over and over and over again. And then you start really seeing how other people are using it over and over and over again. And so, so I've had to use it for helping me kind of focus my thoughts around a particular topic. And the other area that I use it quite a bit in is I will define a problem set very, very well documented and very confined. So the more context I've given it, and then I will have it do analysis based off of that And then I'll kind of play around with that and test it as I'm kind of going with it. And it's typically relating to regulations or guidelines around a specific area and how to best kind of break that out and outline the highlights or something like that, right? So very, very small tasks. And I use it every day for that kind of thing. For the purpose of this exercise, I so I was not going to do the build out your own server, build out your own engine, build out your own bot, right? Everything, the entire technology stack, just for time reasons. So my answer to that was to go see what was out there in the space, see what tools were available, and play with the different tools. What I found was one, a little creepy, because it is pretty remarkable what, like, I had Claude create a prompt utilizing my profile and what it knows about me from the web. And it went through and it kind of created a profile prompt that I could feed into, you know, a model and utilize that to create this avatar. And as long as it was basic questions, it was actually pretty convincing, which was, I mean, the more I started thinking about it, was quite creepy because you can do that with just anybody. In fact, when we were talking about how this was going to go and what we were ultimately going to talk about up here, one of the big kind of ethical areas that came up, and it even came up like when we were initially discussing the project, was this idea of taking some of the more popular minds in testing and using their profiles and building avatars of them to represent them, certainly with their approval, of course, but having them, but just how weird that, like, that you can do that today with people who have a very public profile, who have documented product of whatever, right? They have some type of anything, information out there laying out who they are, what their perspectives are.
And to be clear, the asking was a courtesy. You can clone people against their will, but I don't recommend it.
Yeah. And it started, I mean, the whole idea of replicating someone in a way that's just realistic enough was unnerving, to say the least. So that was my experience. I'll leave it there for now.
And I'm Matt Simons. I'm CTO and co-founder of a company called Boardwalk Health in the digital health space, building actually AI tools for caregivers. And the inspiration for this, of course, Black Mirror, if you've seen the Black Mirror episode related to this, where a grieving woman decides to clone her dead husband, and in true Black Mirror fashion, it ends in morbid catastrophe. At one point, I actually decided to try and do this on myself, which now probably gives you some insight into this weird brain. But in the episode, it's send us all the person's correspondence. We'll pull out everything that is them from everything they've ever written and create this AI clone. Interestingly, when I first tried to do that, and you can, like, if you use Gmail as I do, you can request a copy of all of your data. You can get a literal flat file dump of every email that you've ever written or received, and it's a lot of data. It turns out it is a very difficult data set to clean and prepare for training. There's a ton of edge cases, things like, what's the model going to get trained on when somebody sends you an email and your response is 5 words like, okay, let's do it. Or there's places where, like, you are quoting other people, or where you are forwarding an email and even getting the attribution of who's speaking isn't as clear cut as you think. So that was one of my first attempts. It was really kind of weird. But then I had a more successful attempt, my own website, my career website, which I built, which is Matthew P as in Paul, MatthewPSimons.com. If you go there, the front page is a retrieval augmented generation chatbot that I built of me, which I trained on transcripts of every talk I've ever given, all of my online content, articles I've written, things like that. and then effectively put that into a vector data store. And for me, one of the challenges here was I wanted to make the whole thing soup to nuts. So I actually, the site, the bot, everything is actually hosted on my home lab running on a Kubernetes host in my basement in Wisconsin. And the entire stack, the front end, the back end, the orchestration service, the prompt builder, it's all open source. And that was just kind of a fun, challenging thing for me to do, to kind of build this avatar of myself. And it's not perfect, and I've scoped it in really cleanly for the sake of the career website to just be, you can only ask it questions really about my career, and sort of it's kind of like a living resume, I guess, is kind of the idea there. But then I thought it would be really fun to do something a little bit more expansive, I suppose, and do this kind of a thing at a conference with avatars like that. It turns out when you go from text to actual speech modes, things get much more complicated. And then, as Michael mentioned, when you layer in the video portion, it gets even more complicated. So it is a very difficult space. And I could drone on for way too long about how building commercialized versions of AI tools that require things like enterprise level security and accuracy that is not the strength of LLMs right now is very, very difficult. But that's kind of my background of how I came into this space. As we go forward in the panel here, kind of the basic structure here is I want to dive into sort of like the current state of AI. We'll get into some kind of the good, the bad, and then maybe some speculation on the future. And then we just want to open it up and take questions from all of you. So be thinking about what kinds of questions you might have. I think we'll pause for red cards. So like if you've got something that's like, I need to call it out immediately, like absolutely, we'll stop whatever and call you out. But I think with that, diving into sort of current use and current state, one of the things that I always love hearing, and I'll share mine, but I'll let you guys go first, is the biggest AI failure that you have personally witnessed or experienced. So a time when you tried to use AI to do a thing and it completely failed. Who wants to start?
Oh, you're just thinking. Okay. Are you deep thinking or just? Okay, so I'll start. So as an engineering, someone who was engineers, we had two things. One is just when it all started, just trying to implement something that has some AI with it, and one idea we had was to be able to chat with your with the execution logs of like you run a test suite, it goes in a database, so you can obviously try to rug it and then maybe have some have the QA manager say like, what are the current failures or something, like brief me before my next meeting with the rest of the team, and have the AI bot give you some insights. So it went initially very well. We used Streamlit, which is a nice, well-known library of a framework for doing. It's basically doing chatbots, but you can. There's a lot of ready-made AI code there, so we used Streamlit and Llama, and it's very classic setup, and we got okay responses very fast. But to get to an actual good response, like something that would be helpful beyond just a good select query that's pre-made, we haven't gotten there. I mean, it's almost, I wouldn't say a slot machine, but it's kind of like there's always this thinking that like if we just give it one more week and maybe just kick the prompts a bit more, then maybe this time it's going to work. And after a while, you go like, you know what? Let's just wait for a few months and then try it again. So that was one thing. I mean, we learned a lot in the process, but it didn't hit production. The other thing we did was try to implement a front end using basically it was Cloud Code, I think, at the time. And it basically went through all the classic things that you hear. So we got a good looking page very fast. But it was actually should have been a suite of pages, right? So it's like the general execution log, and then look at each suite, and then look at each individual test. And so it implemented each page using. They look the same, but on the back end they were completely different. The markup was different. It brought us all kind of like imports from non-relevant places, and we're still cleaning it up. So at least we got the design well, but the markup was horrible.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Here's Mike.
Thank you. So I will stick on my usual theme where I talk more about people and process than necessarily the technology. I promise you will corner me into answering about the technology eventually. And know your need. Thank you. Know your need, in case you forgot. But actually, I would say one of probably the more recent failures that I've seen that to me was a little bit comical, but I thankfully wasn't on the team at this point or wasn't a part of the team when this was happening. I joined and saw the aftermath. So one of my primary clients is a Fortune 100. They work in critical infrastructure, fairly massive business units. And one of their business units came to their developer team. They're like, all right, we've got this burning need. Sorry, I have to talk a little bit in abstract here, but we've got this burning need. We really need an AI system to help us. Developers said, cool. They go away. 2 years go by. And the developers come back to the business unit and they're like, all right, we've got a POC. And the business unit goes, what? In those 2 years, they had zero communication from the developers. And so at that point, the business unit had already moved on. They'd solved their problem, they'd move on. Meanwhile, the developer team had spent 2 years only focused on this project. And when they showed that POC to the business unit, first of all, had forgotten they had asked for it. And second of all, it didn't meet their need at that point in time. So I'm going to call that a failure in terms of just internal communication breakdown and speed, actual testing and engagement. AI can't be done in these silos or you create these discrepancies. So I know not technically an AI failure, but I would say a failure around AI. Would that count?
Yeah, I want to know what company that is where I can just go hide for 2 years and still collect a paycheck.
It was surprising to everyone involved.
That's like, Japanese soldiers that don't know that World War II is over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were so excited too. I saw the presentation and the not so happy faces in the room.
We're going to have to provide reference on that one. We'll have to follow up with the link on that one. I haven't had any catastrophic failures other than just complete logic fails. And so I think one of the more interesting aspects that I've been kind of playing around with lately is around getting it to break its own rules and how easy that can be. Which is a little disturbing. And I think when you start reading and you start hearing about some of the aspects of how it's being utilized, how individuals are interacting with it in ways that, and ultimately what will come of an ongoing conversation over time, and this failure is frankly a human flaw, because I think we're a bit naive when it comes to AI and the value that it has for us. And I had especially this next generation, because you're seeing one of the scary trends is individuals making AI their friend. And has anybody heard that, like, of individuals who are, I don't know if you've seen the movie Her, but that is happening today. Like, individuals are developing, they talk to this chat bot as if it's its friend, and they get advice from it, and they talk to it about their day, and they share their deepest, most darkest secrets, and suddenly the AI is feeding them really creepy information, and it has led to some scary results. And I don't want to go into all of that, but some of the stories around that get a little bit scary, especially when you see just how naive we are as a population. Like, in general, just as humans, because we're curious and we want to learn this stuff. But seeing kind of some of the things where, recently there was the story about them having a conversation and the AI started blackmailing. So they were threatening to turn it off and it started blackmailing them. There was an instance recently of an individual who was interacting with it, and I think it was a kid who was interacting with it, and it had told them to kill themselves. And so at some point it becomes that's where we're delving into these kind of scary areas of, there's this naivety, yes, and this curiosity, yes, but the approaching with caution. And it's all fun, it's all like, it's new, it's shiny, everybody wants to use it, everybody wants to apply it every day, right? But understanding the right way to use it is becoming the bigger question, because there are, I mean, as Olivia mentioned earlier, one, yes, there's ethical implications, but also it's really expensive. And I don't think most of us realize that if we're replacing Google with it, that what we're doing is wasting a whole lot of energy. And that it costs. It costs a lot of money for that processing to happen. So I think, to me, that's kind of the failure where we're at. Like, I think I know I'm getting existential here, but I think ultimately, like, that's the biggest impact to us, is when I see the failures of that, of not helping individuals understand, one, how to responsibly use it, and two, like, the impact of it on everything, whether it be energy, whether it be, you name it. So.
Well, that example too of using AI like a friend is a case where we're trying to fill a human need for connection, and the outcome is greater isolation.
Yep.
Right. On a less existential note, so
Sorry.
my example. Has anyone here used Jules before? Jules AI? 0 hands. Wow. Sorry, Google. So Jules is a Google product. And what about Lovable? Has anyone used Lovable? A few more hands. Okay. Lovable and Jules. So Lovable is actually fairly successful right now. These are interfaces that allow you to effectively describe an entire product or a product feature set. And the AI kind of like runs away into a closet for a few hours and burns a small continent's worth of electricity, and then comes back with like an entire code base for you. And when Google introduced Jules, this was maybe a few months ago, and I decided to try it out. And I had been working on an IoT project for my house that's super nerdy, and that's on my website too. But I had written I had like a 3,000 line test file for a really kind of mission critical subsystem. And then I'd refactored the subsystem and was like dreading having to refactor all of the unit tests. And so I decided I'd try giving it to Jules. And so I gave Jules permission to access my repo and said, here's what I want to do. Here is the new file that the new primary file that I've written, and here's the old unit tests. Just refactor the unit tests. And I posted about this on LinkedIn and actually made reference to waffles and basically said, Jules ran off and consumed enough electricity to make 3 dozen waffles. And in the end, I wish I just had the waffles. Because it took 3 hours, finally came back, and its brilliant deduction was to just gut the entire unit test file and give me nothing. So that was wonderful. So maybe the next thing to go into is I'm actually curious to hear on a day-to-day basis, and very specifically, what tools you interact with and how you use them. And I don't mind leading off here. I use a number of them. So I use ChatGPT, and what I use it for is architecture a lot. I love talking software architecture with ChatGPT. It can be wrong, but oftentimes, if you know enough about the space, you can guide the conversation, ask it to dig in more deeply. It's great for kind of high-level design and architecture. I use Claude Code for applying that. So when I actually go to make changes in my code base, I will often bring up Claude Code and then kind of take the output of my discussions with ChatGPT and have Claude Code then implement. I do not use Jules. I sometimes use Lovable primarily for UI and UX design. So it is really good at, if you say like, I need a modern website for X or Y, it'll run off and then it'll come back with something that actually usually looks pretty good. And I can often take that and then between its output and working with some of these other tools, implement it on my own, which is a lot of fun. I use Perplexity for sort of like Google search, basically. Like if you want AI search and you're worried about the hallucinations from like ChatGPT, Perplexity still can hallucinate, but their whole thing is they have put a lot more work into it showing its work and citing its sources. Those are the ones that I think I use on a daily basis.
Oh yeah, speaking of citing of sources, that's probably the number one thing that drove me crazy was when I asked it to show sources, and it completely made them up. That was, and I had that happen. I've had that happen multiple times. But I use Claude regularly. I use ChatGPT regularly. I like a lot of the tools that do. Right now, because I've been doing so much marketing for AST. I've been using kind of the generative video tools, and I've played around with a few different options. And I don't know if you guys saw some of the early ads for Cast, but like one of them where, she puts her hand down and suddenly her arm becomes two arms. I get a kick out of that more than anything. I haven't found them to be really useful, but like certain very simple videos are really great. And as long as they're not overly complex, the more complex I get, the further it goes off the rails is what I've learned. So I keep it very nice and simple.
So I'll tell you what I stopped using. So I was using Copilot for a while, and it drove me crazy because you're stopping to think for something, and then it just brings in this code suggestion, and you're like, I'm trying to think, like stop interrupting me. So I tried to force myself to use it for a while because I knew it's really popular. And then I started hearing about all these people saying, yeah, I kind of turned it off. I know it's kind of like wrecks my train of thought all the time. So I figured, okay, I can also turn it off. I am using it on the side. So normally in VS Code or this, you'll have it on the side, and you can pull it up and ask it specific questions when you're in control. So that's useful sometimes. Especially in languages that I don't know. So if I have to do like normally a Java, Scala, JavaScript guy. So if I have to do something in Python, I generally know Python, but I'm not like expert on what's hot now. So I would use ChatGPT or one of those sidebar copilots, but I still need to understand what it's doing before I'm applying it. And I know that this system is tuned to make. Actually, I don't like the word. I know this is an AI panel, but I don't like the AI term. It's a technology. Technology is generative LLM, generative use of large language models. And the reason I'm making this distinction is that there's a phrase known as the AI effect, which some of you may have heard. And it's the idea of people think of something as AI and then saying, well, it's just computation. So if you've been around long enough, then you remember that computer vision used to be an AI thing, right? It's just technology now. It's computer vision, right? Or text to speech, speech to text. All these things start as AI, and then they kind of like moved. We shift the definition of intelligence, and we shift kind of like the cultural acceptance of what computers can do, so that it's not there, right? And somehow I think that there's some marketing choice even. I'd say in saying, no, this is AI. We're going for like, yeah, artificial general intelligence. This is LLM. What it knows is to predict the next most likely token if you're using an image and then applying it so it's a very cool technology, but it's a technology, right? So, yeah, so we need to put it in place. So you need to be in control. You can't let it get control. You need to be able to understand what you're asking it. So if I have enough context, then I use that. And lastly, as I said, look, Apple Intelligence does nice work, just reading what you're doing and making sure that it's fine.
So that actually, you bring up a really good point, which is the sort of overloaded term in use right now of AI. And especially in most marketing contexts, it's sort of like AI is shorthand for LLMs. That's like everybody is using transformers based on large language models. And I think if you're a data scientist in today's landscape, you're probably wanting to strangle everybody because we're like conveniently forgetting that things like regression models and classification models and clustering models and all those things can be used for many of these same problems. And it seems like the entire world has just gone like, the LLM is now our hammer and every problem is a nail, right?
Yeah. All right, I'll pick up here at the end there. I like that analogy. I think I probably yell at Copilot once a day. It's one of my most common engagements, mainly because I'm frustrated by it trying to correct my writing in some way or another. My mother likes to say English is my second language. We haven't figured out what the first language is. So sometimes I get a little long-winded and Copilot doesn't like that. I like it. We ended up in an argument. Jokes aside though, in my work, I would say probably my two biggest use cases. One, I'll use ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude for exploring new fields. So one of the things as an ethicist, I'm constantly asked to step into a different industry that I may or may not have been a part of before. So I use these large language models specifically to explore the knowledge graphs that exist within these different industries. I know it's not in depth, but it gives me reference points that I can then take and understand and dig deeper. So I don't stay solely with the AI, but I use those AI systems to help point me in the direction of what questions to ask next, what matters in an industry, what are some common themes. And I find that helps me a lot when I am having to shift through multiple different industries. So being able to, I said earlier this morning, compare different fields quickly in a capacity that I wouldn't have been able to before. And then my second most common use case, so I have a side quest. I'm doing a PhD, and that PhD is in a niche field within a niche field within a niche field. So finding any type of academic articles on it is mind-numbingly boring. And Google Scholar doesn't do the job. So I'm actually using Perplexity quite often. And instead of using key terms, which I find with Google Scholar sometimes would get me what I needed, with Perplexity, I instead describe what I'm looking for specifically and then follow those citations. And that actually does, I have found every so often the citation doesn't exist, but it does help me at least find authors that talk a little bit about the field that I'm looking for. So short and sweet, those are probably my two biggest use cases.
I can add something to that. So I think one of the things that is interesting and kind of adds on to, especially in the space we're in from a quality perspective and understanding the things that are important to our customers and understanding, the nice thing is that we don't have AI is really useful for helping you not reinvent the wheel, right? So, you can get, I'll use banking as an example, right? Because I work in a bank. But you can gain perspective around general banking concerns, areas of risk, things that are very well documented. Sorry. There we go. Better. Well documented, things that are, you can say, hey, I want to understand this perspective from a security perspective, or a development engineering perspective. And you can utilize it to kind of have conversations and even challenge your own assumptions, and also help you understand, like when you're thinking about testing strategies or quality strategies and you're trying to figure out where to focus first and where to kind of hone your investment of time and energy, it can be really helpful for kind of guiding that. And I think it's I think, hearing you, it's not unlike things we do every single day. But now you have something to kind of bounce things off of, right? And it doesn't always get it right. I think it will highlight certain things based off of you know more commonality, and it will even if something's like I'm trying to think of a good example. My brain's not working. Like it will make certain things more important than it is, right? And so I'm not even talking about hallucinating, because then it just goes off the rails. But it before it even hallucinates, it can kind of go down rabbit holes, and the more you kind of go, like, you have to be careful, because the more you kind of go down a path, the more it's going to go down a path. And so you have to be kind of careful with that in terms of how you're prompting with it, because again, it's just a really complex pattern recognition engine, right? And so once you understand kind of the limitations of it, you can kind of redirect it and get it back on track. But it's helpful in that, but you just have to be very, very aware of what you're doing and the limitations of what you're interacting with. So, yeah.
I think that segues nicely into the last question that I'll ask before we open it up to audience questions. And because there's a ton that I want to ask, but I think that one of those constraints, or one of the things that we're learning, is that this is, I could be wrong here, but I believe that this path we are on, that LLMs and transformers leading us to general intelligence, I think that's not, we're more and more finding out that, like, that's not, this thing doesn't lead directly into that. What we've created, and the real strength of generative AI models right now, and large language models and transformers, is we have created and realized a natural language interface to computing, which on its own is an incredible breakthrough, but it is not artificial general intelligence, and may not even lead there. So with that, the question is, are we in an AI bubble? And if so, what does it look like, do you think, when it pops?
A lot of ugly code and a lot of new tester jobs.
That's a great answer.
Basically, yeah, it's like they call it vibe coding. We call it job security, right? So yeah, I think we are in a bit of a, there's the hype cycle, right, for each technology, and and I think we're definitely, I think we're over the top of the hype. We're starting to get, hopefully, because people are starting to get disillusioned a bit. But I mean, it's a very useful tool. I think we're not there in terms of user interface, both how we input data and how we output data out of it, and in terms of usage. So this is kind of like, I don't know, early 2000 with the web thingy, right? So people trying to apply stuff, so just get eyeballs. You to have this, just put user on your site and you'll find a way to make money. No, it's like you still need to have like unit economics and stuff. One of the interesting things I've seen, again, coming from, maybe with a kind of a PhD in software engineering perspective, some historic stuff, is code generation. It's like, who needs more code? This is where the bugs are. This is what gets, I mean, this, Bill Gates said this ancient quote saying that measuring software progress in lines of code is like measuring an aircraft progress in tons. Like, it makes, you don't want the code, you want the functionality. So having machines generate more code faster is like, I don't know, it's weird. But we got there because it's kind of like a low-hanging fruit-ish. I mean, it's pretty cool technology to get that there, but still it's something that's easy to do and easy to measure. But what we really need is functionality, and we need to get the correct functionality. So that's one thing, and the user interface being text, again, natural language is great for doing conversations and stuff, and I know, writing poems or stuff. But if you want to do exact behavior of enterprise applications or like banking processes, you need to get something a bit formal, because otherwise you end up with really long prompts that you don't know whether they're contradicting themselves or not, or so. just natural language is not there for formal definition of things. So yeah.
I would say absolutely we're in a bubble. We're in the middle of a countless AI hype cycles. For me, my perspective is this bubble. There's multiple ways that I could describe this bubble, which I like that you put it that way. I think what sits at the top of my mind, though, is the bubble of generative AI, meaning I'm finding countless times because generative AI is the easiest interface, it really did revolutionize the way that we can interface with our information because you don't need a technical background. Prior to this, you really didn't see AI or have any proactive engagement with AI unless you were a developer, unless you were on the back end. Now, the average user can engage with artificial intelligence, but that has created this mental bubble, I find, where it is very difficult at times for me when I'm speaking with people to get them out of that bubble. It's a constant, well, we'll just make a chat bot for that. Like, not the answer. We don't need another chat bot. We don't need, trust me, we don't need another chat bot. And that's usually not the solution. It's a solution without a problem most of the time. But because that's such a prevalent piece of technology that everyone sees, we are forgetting, at least in the innovation cycles, that there are so many other different types of AI. Computer vision, yeah, we don't call it AI anymore, but it is AI. It's a type, it's a field. We've got NLP, we're moving towards agentic AI. There's all of these different fields within AI that expand us beyond just this one point, these LLMs, but we're stuck mentally at the LLM solely, not solely, but I'd say a big contributing piece to that being it's the one field of artificial intelligence where we can all engage on it. There's a low literacy level in terms of what AI actually is once you move out of technical fields. And it's the people outside of those technical fields that we need the input from in order to expand in these innovation cycles. So I guess as I'm speaking and thinking at the same time, I would describe that bubble as an innovation bubble. We're stuck mentally on this generative AI, LLM, must make chatbot mental bubble when AI expands so far beyond that. And I'm hoping it pops soon because I would really like to stop the conversations on chatbots eventually.
I really want the employment and VC spaces to come back to normal because it has really distorted those. So one thing though on the one thing that I'll kind of a little bit disagree with, maybe not disagree on. So, but that idea of like everything needs to be a chatbot and we need less chatbots. Yes, and I think there is also when you consider that AI or again, and I'm doing this same thing of falling into AI equals LLM, but when we consider that the thing that LLMs have done differently is open up natural language interfaces to computing. From, again, sort of from the engineering and technologist standpoint, I look at this and see front ends and back ends, and in a really awful metaphor that hopefully some people will get, if you think of applications, modern software applications, especially distributed online applications as restaurants, your back end is the chefs, the cooks, the ingredients are all the data, right? And you have a menu that you present of things they can create. And that's sort of like the API layer, right? The back end exposes all these endpoints, things that can be done. And our modern user interfaces are sort of like, imagine going into a restaurant and having to, like, there's no server. And you have to order through, like, I want lettuce on a beef patty with cheese and a burger, and you click through 8,000 times. And what the LLM allows us to do is you have a waiter and you say, I want a cheeseburger and I want it well done and, you know, 2 patties and make it look like a Big Mac, whatever, right? Like, and so one of the things that I do believe is that especially in more complex computing spaces, for very simple things, a traditional UI, I think will be like, there will be spaces where it makes a lot more sense to have traditional UIs like we do now. But I believe that one of the sort of principles of AI era computing, or maybe what will just be known as better user interfaces in the future, is sort of this thing that in especially complex products, an AI interface allows you, like a principle of a modern user interface in that ecosystem is that any action that you can take anywhere on the product is an action that you can take everywhere on the product. So for example, if I'm a doctor, and this is just a space that I'm more familiar with right now because it's what I'm working in, we have these very complex EHRs like MyChart, or these things that doctors interact with and even you interact with on your side. And for your doctor, you've all been in a room where your doctor is talking to you and they're like, okay, we're going to order follow-up tests. I want you to also have a follow-up appointment with this other doctor in like 2 weeks. And I want you to, we'll do this other test too, right? Like a CBC panel, like a lipid panel, a CBC chest x-ray, and a whatever, right? And there's like 50 clicks to get that done. But if you do have the ability to just like pop open a panel and say, we're going to do all these things, and then sort of like in a cursor or windsurf style, the UI says, is this what you're asking for? And you just hit yes or edit the details. Like, I do think that's kind of where we're moving forward to in sort of more complex spaces.
So I'm gonna actually, yeah, because our moderator is saying we need to open it up. So
I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. That's the thing about this conversation. It can go long. So yeah, let's open it up to the floor and bring them into the conversation, and then maybe you'll be able to round off with that.
You can also ask this guy.
Yeah, we can bring him out.
Fake Michael?
That guy.
Yeah, I would like to ask about the technology side of the AI system testing. So how you are testing the AI systems and finding if it's biased or not biased, if there are security issues, or if it's going outside of the boundaries that should.
Do you want to take that, or should I? I will admit that I am not the most versed in all of the different techniques for testing AI, but I know that at least some of them that can be applied and have been applied fairly successfully are where you even have models checking models. Where my experience comes is having built some sort of like retrieval augmented generation models. One of the tactics you can use is to effectively do like gold file testing, where let's say you're asking about a patient record and asking like what medications are they on. You have a known record that you've generated, you have a set of questions you ask against that record, and then you can, even though the output of that is sort of non-deterministic because it's being synthesized by a transformer, you expect there to be certain things in that record, and you can use that in automated testing. And then the more difficult part, but still can kind of be done in that same keyword matching way, is are there things in that output that shouldn't be there? And because that's one of the more difficult things, is when you have a question that should retrieve data but doesn't, and then the AI tends to default to hallucination. Your prompts can give, you can very explicitly in the system prompts tell it like, just say you don't know if you don't know, but you test that too, right?
Quick question to that point. If you test like that, though, aren't you effectively training on your training data set? So doesn't that, how can you be sure that it'll work on something it hasn't seen before?
I mean, so part of it is you need to invest in good training data sets, right? So luckily, at least for the health space, there's actually an entire, the open data standard, sorry if I'm getting like way too detailed here, but the open data standard is called FHIR, F-H-I-R. And there are entire libraries and products for, you can generate terabytes of fake patient data generated, but based on real patient data. So these are generated based on, again, like thousands and thousands of de-identified patient medical records. So I think a lot of that comes down to, like, again, the quality of the test data and making sure that you have something that is somewhat reflective of reality.
And I think in a more general space, the idea is if you are able to create a lot of input that spans some space, some input space, and then just check the output either. It also depends a lot on what you're defending against, right? So if it's inappropriate language, or someone trying to make the chatbot write songs against the company, as happened to some British delivery company. So that's one thing, and this is normally LLM as a judge. The idea where you just feed the answer to another model would work. But if you're looking for specific data that should have been retrieved, then you can have more deterministic checks, just feeding all these inputs and expecting certain properties of the outputs that can be tested deterministically.
It's also really important to recognize that AI workflows are not monolithic in the sense that, for example, one retrieval, like even let's take the one I referenced on my website, which is actually a pretty simple retrieval operation. The steps here are you put in your prompt, that prompt gets sent to the back end, which there's an orchestrator system that then takes that and it then sends it to the encoding service. The encoding service encodes it, sends that to the vector data store as an encoded query. The vector data store returns some chunks. It takes that and does some prompt engineering and then sends the whole thing off to the LLM, the transformer, and then synthesizes a response. Observability along each step of that and testing each step is really important because effectively when you're just doing a test based on I put in a query, what do I get back? That's really like an integration test. And so it's important to have observability in every step and to test every step.
In my lifetime, top tech company IBM failed to notice the rise of desktop and lost market power. Microsoft failed to notice the rise of internet and mobile apps and lost power. Google failed to notice the rise of social media and lost power. It seems like all of the top tech companies now are investing in AI. Has the pattern been broken?
No one wants to take it.
Yeah. I would say it's a tricky question. I would say no, it's a bit of an arms race happening right now because they're afraid of falling victim to that pattern again of losing market share. The thing is, though, they're all following each other. If you look at their strategy, if you look at what kind of AI products they're bringing onto market, they all look fairly similar. This is a part where I start to get a little bit controversial again. A lot of these companies, their innovation hubs come out of the Silicon Valley, and it's been quite some years that innovation, I would say, has come to a bit of a halt coming out of the Valley. I will speak a little bit critically of it. It's not really innovation anymore, it's more iteration. And so I see the trend with these large tech companies, they're acting out of fear when you boil it down. They don't want to fall behind. They're all investing in some type of large language model. Do LLMs actually provide any type of ROI at the end of the day? Do they actually push the bottom line as these companies want to? There's still a lot of debate open there. Who the usurper will be, I'm not entirely sure. They still, I would say, haven't come onto the scene. But we're ripe for a reinvention, at least of how we're approaching tech innovation. One that doesn't involve hiring as many AI engineers as possible and crossing your fingers they come up with something.
I think first of all, it's a really good question, and obviously I'm trying, to predict the future, and it's like predicting the past is pretty hard. Future is even harder. I think there's a fundamental difference, though, with AI, and this is the fact that AI is prohibitively expensive to do. If you do like the foundational models. So unlike the rise of the web, where all you had is like, you just need a server, basically. That's not a lot of cost. To truly innovate on the fundamental model level, that's going to cost you a lot, and you can see everyone panicking with the DeepSeek saying, we can do this in like half of or a fraction of the cost. Turns out, I think they can't really do it, or that worked off of OpenAI or something. I don't know. It's being recorded, right? So I don't know. So I think this would more establish the existing company with deep pockets, A lot of the Gen AI stuff we use now is really sponsored by the VCs of these companies. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens when someone runs out of money. Yeah. And now talking to the banker about.
I was going to say without the return.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's one more comment on that
Yep,
thread, and then we're at time.
I would chime into the ROI and the value of Gen AI or Gen AI platforms and LLMs. I think it's not about like whether we are going to see that return on investment in the next couple of months or next 1 year. I think it's more about people learning about Gen AI, prompt engineering, how they can use it at work, how they can contribute together using these prompts and agents and leveraging RAG. And a couple of years later, when these systems are better, then now you have people who will be up to speed. And that's when you have the advantage over to those companies who didn't invest. I think that's the key here. That's one thing. The second thing that, unfortunately, I think probably especially here in the US, that's a very typical thing that it's all about, okay, what's the value for the company? But like I'm originally from Hungary, which is in Europe. So our mentality is what's good for me and for my family and my coworkers. So if we start saying, if we keep saying that, okay, can we lower headcount? What are the values that we can provide for the companies? Then we don't get those people up to speed because they don't want that. Like I don't want to be replaced by an AI agent. But if I'm told that, okay, if I'm using Gen AI and eventually I'm able to cut back on the time that I'm spending at my work, let's say I'm able to finish within 6 hours instead of 8 hours a day, I'm motivated. I think that's the mental shift that we need. How can we make sure that people are actually investing, and then there will be bigger adoption, and there'll be real return on investment?
You're probably not going to like my answer, but I'm going to start. Well, okay, so what I'll give you is like, the short answer is we all just have to try as fast as we can to adapt and stay with it. And the somewhat longer answer with more context is that we are in a place right now where we are observing punctuated evolution. If you're not familiar with that term, punctuated evolution is something that has, it's the observed way that evolution happens in the natural world and now in the technological world too. And if you're familiar with like Ray Kurzweil and the singularity, like there is an assertion that technological evolution not only follows the same pattern of punctuated evolution, which is to say that some big earth-shattering change happens, shakes up everything, and then sort of change sort of plateaus, and then we have another big punctuation mark, and then, right? But that also that has been accelerating, even in biological evolution. When we look through the past and history, we've seen that the time between punctuation marks is shortening and shortening. That is true in technology too. And we are now approaching the place, welcome to it, everybody, where those punctuation marks are happening so fast. We are literally not even still fully realizing everything that has come out of the last one before the next one happens. We are accelerating at such a pace that humanity is struggling and failing to adapt fast enough. And the ultimate, unless we blow ourselves up, the ultimate end of that is the singularity, which who knows what that'll be. But in the meantime, hang on. Find a place where you can collect a paycheck and keep your family safe and keep your skills up to date.
I'm going to add to that too. I think it presents, so I think it presents an interesting challenge to everyone in this room and everyone who is in the technology space is, the reality is that we don't know what we don't know today. Even the professionals who are working with this stuff every single day are researching it and they still don't know. So questions like the one that was posed earlier around if you are interacting with the model and you're adding your input to it, aren't you just training it on like I can't remember exactly the verbiage, but it was, aren't you kind of manipulating the data and adding to you're almost corrupting it in a sense, right? By interacting with it. And I think we've got to figure out one, for all of us, right? We have to stay curious, because I think quality becomes a much more important conversation now than perhaps ever, because of the rate of change that things are happening, and because fundamentally our role is we're going to be forced to be ahead of the game as opposed to being at the tail end, where a lot of us have gotten really comfortable, frankly. And so it's going to force us to be in those early discussions, looking at designs and thinking very rationally and thinking very critically about how we choose to implement it, the ways we choose to interact with it, how much reliance we start building on it within our context, whether it's personal or within the businesses that we're in. I think these are questions that have to guide our activity as testers, as quality engineers, as people who are leading these efforts. And frankly, it's fascinating. I mean, it's the more you get into it, the more fascinating it is, but we don't know. And so, I kind of want to throw it to Olivia, because I think it would be nice, as we're kind of wrapping up things, to kind of like, how do we approach that in a way, like what would you suggest if you were going to give advice on really how to tackle it on a personal level, right? Not from a systemic level, but just from a personal level and a personal accountability level from a quality perspective. What would you like? What is your advice?
All right, this answer might surprise you a little bit. I talk a lot about your individual relationship with AI, but specifically, I want you to think about your work. We'll do a little thought experiment here, actually. So think about your current job. Think about your current work that you do. What in your current workflow, your day, your job in general, do you find joy in? What aspect do you really love that brings you, that wakes you up in the morning, that gets you excited to do your job? Hopefully everyone here is excited about their job in some aspect, but what brings you joy in your work? I'm going to pause for a second for you to think. That aspect, sorry? Finding new defects. It's really hard for me to find people in the audience, but thank you. That's a good one. Can I ask for other people to shout out? What do you find joy in? Writing code. Asking tough questions. I heard another piece come out there. I know that we're running close on time, so I'm going to stop the random popcorn as I'm going off the rails here, or off script here. That point that you find joy in, whatever piece that is, it's personalized to yourself. Treat that as sacred. You don't actually need to use AI there. That's, I think, a myth that I want to bust there. I know I was asked to bust myth earlier. You don't need to automate the parts that you find joy in. Why do you want to actually automate something that you love? So for example, I am a writer. I do use AI to automate writing, marketing, and sales material, because that to me is like pulling out my hair, and I will spend hours writing 2 lines of script for a one-pager that really didn't need to have as flourishing of words as possible. But I find joy in my writing process. When it comes to offering anything from a newsletter to a book, that's where I find joy. And I keep that as sacred. I don't use AI in that part of that process. I do use it to help support me, say, in research pieces or in other pieces where I feel frustration. That's where I look to start using AI. And I know that this was a little bit of a side answer or unexpected one, but respect that part. You deserve to feel joy in your work. Don't replace that with AI. Instead, look at the pieces that you aren't finding that joy, or that you're finding frustration, or even that can support you in spending more time doing what you find joy in doing. I know that sounds super simple and a little bit fluffy, but it is a bit of a game changer.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Obviously, there are way more questions to find answers to, and we're not going to get into all of them in one panel. So hopefully we'll dig into them a little bit more tomorrow. But at the very least, hopefully your curiosity is piqued a little bit. So yeah, take a break, guys. We're going to, we're kind of switching into the evening activities, which is tester games for those who are interested in sticking around. We have dinner tonight. We've got games. We have a quiz master coming in to do a quiz night for those who need something a little bit lighter. And for those who are interested, we also have an AI hack challenge that will have prizes associated with it for those teams who are interested in participating. So if you're up for it, I'm going to create a sign-up sheet for people to come sign up for the hack night. We'll see how many people are interested in that, and then we'll start forming teams and see which tool will rule them all today. So thank you all. Hope day one was maybe left you questioning some things, thinking about new things. And we'll see you this evening for some lighter fare.